The red lights flashed across the bridge of the Coalition warship as another distress signal went silent. Admiral Zethkari stood with his 6 arms crossed, watching the tactical display with growing horror. 17 star systems had fallen in just 1 month. The Vorthak swarm was unstoppable. "Sir, we're receiving the final transmission from Colony 7, reported Lieutenant Zeltar from his station. His voice shook as he spoke. "They're requesting immediate evacuation assistance." The Admiral's 4 eyes turned toward the main screen. Colony 7 housed 12 million souls across 3 different species. Men, women, children, elderly, all of them about to die in the most horrible way possible. The Vorthak didn't just kill their victims, they consumed them, adding their biological matter to the ever-growing swarm. "How long until the evacuation ships arrive?" Admiral Zethkari asked, though he already knew the answer. 47 hours, sir. The Vorthak will reach the colony in 6 hours. The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of warning alarms. Another world would die today. Another civilization would be wiped from existence. The Coalition had tried everything: plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, even experimental gravity weapons. Nothing worked. The Vorthak adapted to every attack, their bioships growing stronger with each battle. Dr. Elena Martinez stood at the back of the bridge, watching the tragedy unfold. She was one of only 3 humans serving in the Coalition military, and now she felt completely useless. Her species had been banned from joining the galactic community 300 years ago. Too violent, the Council had said. Too dangerous for civilized space. Elena clutched the data crystal in her pocket. Inside it were files that could change everything, or destroy what little hope remained. The forbidden archives contained detailed records about Earth and its people. Records that every Coalition species had agreed should never be opened. The screen flickered as Colony 7's transmission began. A young Altarian female appeared, her blue skin pale with fear. Behind her, Elena could see families running toward evacuation shelters that would never protect them from what was coming. "This is Colony 7 control to any Coalition vessels," the woman said, her voice breaking. "We can see their ships on our sensors. Thousands of them. They'll be here soon. Please, someone help us. We have children here. We have families. We don't want to die like this." The transmission cut to static. Everyone on the bridge knew what that meant. The Vorthak had arrived. Admiral Zethkari closed all 4 of his eyes and bowed his head. In his 50 years of military service, he had never felt so helpless. The Coalition possessed the most advanced technology in the galaxy. They had weapons that could destroy entire planets, shields that could stop any known force, and the combined wisdom of dozens of civilized species. Yet none of it mattered against the swarm. "Sir?" came a quiet voice from behind him. The Admiral turned to see Dr. Martinez approaching. Her face was pale, but her eyes held a determination he had never seen before. In her hand, she carried a sealed container marked with the most dangerous symbol in Coalition space, the quarantine seal of the Terran exclusion zone. "Dr. Martinez, what are you doing with that?" The Admiral's voice carried a warning tone. Those files were classified at the highest level. Even looking at them without authorization was a crime punishable by exile. "I've been thinking, sir, about our situation, about what we're facing." Elena held up the crystal. "The Vorthak have defeated every weapon we have. They've adapted to every strategy we've tried. Traditional warfare isn't working." "That's not your concern, Doctor. Your job is to study alien biology, not military strategy." "But that's exactly my point." Elena moved closer, lowering her voice so only the Admiral could hear. "I've been studying the Vorthak for months. They're unlike anything we've ever encountered. They don't think like us. They don't fight like us. To beat them, we need to think differently too." Admiral Zethkari looked at the crystal with fear. He knew what it contained. Every Coalition officer did. Stories of a species so violent that they had been quarantined from galactic society. A race that had turned their own planet into a battlefield for thousands of years. People who thought war was not just acceptable, but necessary. The Terrans were isolated for good reason, Dr. Martinez. The reports from First Contact described them. as the most dangerous species ever discovered. They've spent their entire history killing each other. They've developed weapons that could destroy entire worlds. They think violence is the solution to every problem. Which is exactly why we need them now, Elena replied. The Vorthak are winning because we fight with honor. We follow rules, we try to minimize casualties and protect civilians. But the swarm doesn't care about any of that. They just want to consume everything in their path. Another alarm sounded. Another colony was under attack. The tactical display showed 3 more systems turning red as Vorthak forces spread across the galaxy like a plague. Elena continued speaking, her voice growing more urgent. I've been running computer simulations using what little data we have about human military tactics. Sir, they don't fight wars to win territory or resources. They fight wars to completely destroy their enemies. When humans go to war, they don't stop until every threat is eliminated. The Admiral stared at the data crystal. Coalition law was clear. Contact with the quarantined species was forbidden under any circumstances. The penalty for breaking that law was exile from civilized space. But as he watched another star system fall to the swarm, he wondered if there would be any civilized space left to be exiled from. The Council would never approve contact with the Terrans, he said. The Council is meeting in emergency session, right now, Elena replied. They're desperate, sir. We all are. 3 more systems will fall this week, 5 more next week. At this rate, the swarm will reach the core worlds within 6 months. On the main screen, long-range sensors showed the horrifying truth. The Vorthak weren't just conquering territory, they were growing. Each world they consumed made them stronger. Each battle they won gave them more resources to build new bioships. The Coalition was fighting a losing war against an enemy that became more powerful with every victory. Elena pulled up a holographic display showing the swarm's projected path. Look at this, sir. Even if we do nothing, even if we let the outer colonies fall, the Vorthak will reach human space in 18 months. They're going to encounter the Terrans whether we contact them or not. The question is, do we want them as allies, or do we want them to face this threat alone and unprepared? Admiral Zethkari studied the projection. The math was simple and terrifying. The swarm would eventually reach every inhabited world in the galaxy. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The Coalition could choose to face extinction with honor, or they could break their oldest law and contact the most dangerous species in known space. Another transmission came through from a border world. This time, there were no words, just screams and the sound of bioships tearing through defensive barriers. The Admiral made his decision. He activated his personal communicator and sent an encrypted message to Coalition Command. 3 words that would change galactic history forever. Authorized Terran contact. Elena felt her heart racing as she realized what was happening. After 3 centuries of isolation, humanity was about to rejoin the galaxy. Not as explorers or diplomats, but as weapons of war against an enemy that threatened all life. The Coalition had run out of hope, out of options, out of time. Now they would discover if their most dangerous mistake could become their salvation. Captain Ryan Davis was drinking his morning coffee when the communication system on his ship started making sounds he had never heard before. He was patrolling the edge of human space, the same boring route he had flown 100 times before. Nothing ever happened out here. The most exciting thing in months had been a broken satellite. Captain, you need to see this, called Lieutenant Amy Walsh from the communications station. Her voice was strange, almost frightened. We're receiving a transmission, but it's not from any human ship or station. Ryan put down his coffee and walked over to her station. On the screen was a message written in symbols he didn't recognize, but below the alien writing, someone had tried to translate it into English. The translation was rough, full of grammar mistakes, but the meaning was clear enough to make his blood run cold. To the humans of Earth, we are the Galactic Coalition. We need your help. A great enemy threatens all life in the galaxy. They are called the Vorthak. They consume entire worlds. We have tried to stop them, but we cannot. Please respond. Time is running out. Ryan stared at the message for a long moment. First contact with alien life. Every human had dreamed about this moment for centuries, but not like this. Not as a cry for help against some kind of galactic threat. "Sir, what should we do?" Amy asked. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command, Priority Alpha." While Amy worked on the transmission, Ryan read the message again. Attached to it were star charts showing the location of something called the Vorthak Swarm. According to the data, this enemy was moving toward human space. Even if they ignored the aliens' request for help, this threat would reach Earth eventually. The communication line to Earth crackled to life. "Earth Command, this is Admiral Kate Morrison. What's your emergency, Captain Davis?" "Admiral, we've received first contact from an alien coalition. They're requesting military assistance against something called the Vorthak Swarm. I'm sending you the full message now." There was silence on the line for several minutes. Ryan could imagine the chaos erupting at Earth Command as they processed humanity's first contact with alien life. When Admiral Morrison spoke again, her voice was deadly serious. "Captain, maintain your position and monitor all communications. Do not respond to the alien message until further orders. This goes to the top immediately." On Earth, President Lisa Carter was in a budget meeting when her security chief burst through the door. General Frank Torres was right behind him, carrying a datapad with an expression that could have melted steel. "Madam President, we have a situation. First contact situation." Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. "Hostile?" "Unknown. They're asking for our help." Frank handed her the datapad. "They claim to represent something called the Galactic Coalition. According to their message, there's a species called the Vorthak that's consuming entire star systems." Lisa read the message twice, then looked at the attached star charts. The projected path of the Vorthak swarm would eventually reach human space whether they helped the aliens or not. How reliable is this information? We're analyzing everything now. But if it's true, we're looking at an existential threat to humanity. These Vorthak things will reach our outer colonies in about 18 months. Lisa stood up and walked to the window overlooking Washington. 3 centuries ago, humanity had been contacted by an alien coalition. That first contact had ended with Earth being quarantined from galactic society. The aliens had called humans too violent, too dangerous for civilized space. Now those same aliens were asking for help. Call an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. Get me the heads of every major military force on the planet. And Frank, find out everything we can about why we were quarantined in the first place. 6 hours later, the most powerful people on Earth sat around a conference table staring at holographic displays, showing the Vorthak swarms advance across the galaxy. Dr. Kevin Wright, Earth's top expert on theoretical alien biology, was explaining what they had learned. Based on the data the Coalition sent us, the Vorthak appear to be some kind of hybrid organic synthetic species. They consume biological matter from other species and use it to grow their forces. Every world they conquer makes them stronger. General Susan Hayes, commander of the North American Defense Forces, studied the tactical data. Their technology is unlike anything we've theorized. These bioships seem to adapt to enemy weapons in real time. No wonder the Coalition can't stop them. "What about the Coalition itself?" asked President Carter. "What do we know about them?" Dr. Wright pulled up another display. They represent about 40 different species across roughly 2,000 star systems. Highly advanced technology, but their military doctrine appears to be based on what we would call honorable warfare. They try to minimize casualties, protect civilians, follow rules of engagement. General Torres snorted. "Rules of engagement against an enemy that eats entire planets. No wonder they're losing." "That brings us to the real question," President Carter said. "Why are they asking us for help? According to their own records, they quarantined us because we were too violent." Dr. Wright looked uncomfortable. "I've been reviewing the original first contact records. The aliens were horrified by human history, our wars, our weapons, our willingness to use any tactic necessary to win. They called us a danger to galactic peace. And now they want that danger on their side," General Hayes observed. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Humanity had been isolated for 3 centuries. because other species feared what humans might do if they joined galactic civilization. Now those same species were desperate enough to break their own quarantine. President Carter looked around the table at her advisors. Opinions? General Torres spoke first. Madam President, if this data is accurate, we're fighting for our own survival whether we help them or not. The swarm will reach us eventually. Better to fight them now with allies than face them alone later. But what kind of allies? Asked Dr. Wright. These coalition species quarantined us for being too violent. What happens after we help them win? Do they trust us then, or do they fear us even more? General Hayes pulled up the tactical displays again. Look at these battle reports. The coalition has lost every major engagement with the Vorthak. They're using conventional military tactics against an enemy that doesn't follow any rules. They need us to do what they can't or won't do. Which is what, exactly? President Carter asked. Torres answered bluntly. Fight dirty. Use every weapon we have. Show no mercy. Do whatever it takes to win, regardless of the cost. The president stared at the star chart showing the Vorthak advance. Millions of alien civilians had already died. Billions more would die if the swarm wasn't stopped. And eventually, the threat would reach Earth itself. What's our current military readiness? We can have a task force ready to deploy within 72 hours. Torres replied. Full battle group with our most advanced ships and best crews. President Carter made her decision. Prepare the fleet. Send a message to this coalition. Tell them we're coming. As the meeting broke up, Dr. Wright approached the president privately. Ma'am, I have to ask, are we sure about this? Once we break our isolation, there's no going back. The galaxy will see what humans are capable of in war. President Carter looked out the window at the stars. Dr. Wright, they quarantined us because they were afraid of what we might do. Now they're about to find out if they were right to be afraid. The question is, will they be more afraid of us? Or of what happens if we don't help them? In space, Captain Davis received new orders from Earth Command. He was to respond to the coalition message with coordinates for a meeting. Humanity was about to rejoin galactic civilization, not as explorers or diplomats, but as the weapon of last resort against an enemy that threatened all life. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was going to war. The Kepler 442 system was dying. Admiral Zethkari watched from his command ship as Vorthak biovessels swarmed around the third planet like hungry insects. The coalition garrison had been fighting for 6 days straight, but their ammunition was running low and their shields were failing. In a few more hours, another 12 million civilians would be consumed by the swarm. Sir, we're detecting hyperspace signatures, reported his communications officer. Multiple ships dropping out of jump space. On the main screen, 37 human warships appeared in perfect formation. Admiral Zethkari had seen the technical specifications, but seeing them in person was different. The human ships were smaller than coalition vessels, but they moved with a speed and agility that seemed impossible for their size. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. We're here to help. The human voice was calm, almost casual. Admiral Zethkari activated his communicator. Commander Morrison, I am Admiral Zethkari of the Coalition 4th Fleet. The Vorthak have overwhelming numbers. We estimate over 2,000 bioships in this system. Understood, Admiral. We've been studying their attack patterns. Request permission to begin our assault. Admiral Zethkari looked at the tactical display. The humans were outnumbered 60 to 1. According to every rule of space combat, they should retreat immediately. Commander, perhaps you should reconsider. The odds are not in our favor. Admiral, with respect, we didn't come here to play it safe. Beginning attack run now. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. The human ships didn't charge directly at the Vorthak fleet like coalition forces usually did. Instead, they split into small groups and began moving in patterns that made no tactical sense. Dr. Elena Martinez watched from the bridge of Admiral Zethkari's flagship as the humans launched their first attack. She expected to see the familiar plasma cannons and energy weapons that coalition forces used. Instead, the human ships fired something completely different. What are those weapons? Admiral Zethkari asked. Elena checked her sensors. Nuclear missiles, sir, hundreds of them. The Admiral's four eyes widened in horror. Nuclear weapons had been banned by galactic law for over 1,000 years. They were considered too destructive, too dangerous for civilized warfare. But the humans were firing them like they were conventional weapons. The missiles didn't target the Vorthak ships directly. Instead, they detonated in the planet's upper atmosphere, creating massive electromagnetic pulses that washed over the biofleet. For the first time in months, Admiral Zethkari saw something beautiful. Vorthak ships losing power and drifting helplessly in space. The electromagnetic pulse is disrupting their hive mind communications, Elena reported with excitement. They can't coordinate their attacks anymore. Commander Morrison's voice came over the radio again. All coalition forces, the Vorthak, are vulnerable for approximately 18 minutes while they adapt to the EMP effects. Recommend immediate attack on disabled vessels. Admiral Zethkari gave the order, and coalition ships moved in to destroy the helpless biovessels. But the humans weren't finished. As the Vorthak began to recover from the electromagnetic attack, the human fighters launched. Lieutenant Amy Collins led her squadron of 12 fighters toward the largest Vorthak bioship. Her squadron moved like nothing the coalition had ever seen. They flew through debris fields that should have been impossible to navigate, using the wreckage of destroyed ships as cover. Collins here, beginning ramming attack on the command vessel. Admiral Zethkari couldn't believe what he was hearing. Did she say ramming attack? On the screen, he watched as Amy's fighter accelerated directly toward the massive bioship. At the last second, she ejected from her craft just as it slammed into the alien vessel's hull. The explosion tore a hole in the side of the bioship, but that wasn't the end of it. Recovery team, I need pickup at coordinates 447221. Amy's voice came over the radio. She was floating in space in her survival suit, watching as her wingman repeated the same insane tactic on another Vorthak vessel. They're using their own ships as weapons, Admiral Zethkari said in amazement. How are they surviving those ejections? Elena was studying the tactical data. Their pilots are trained for high-risk maneuvers. They have special survival suits and recovery procedures. It's like they planned for this kind of combat. The space battle raged for 3 hours. The humans used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They fired weapons into debris fields, causing explosions that damaged both enemy and friendly ships. They flew their fighters through the exhaust ports of bioships, detonating explosives inside the vessels. They even used their own damaged ships as guided missiles. But the real shock came when the ground battle began. Colonel Steve Parker led 2,000 human Marines to the planet's surface, where Vorthak ground forces had been consuming the local population. What the coalition forces saw there would haunt them forever. The humans didn't just fight the Vorthak. They hunted them. Parker's Marines used flamethrowers to burn out the bio-creatures hiding in buildings. They used chemical weapons to poison the air in underground tunnels where the aliens had taken shelter. They set traps using explosives and biological agents that would kill anything that came near. Colonel Parker, those weapons are banned by the Geneva Convention, Elena said over the radio. Parker's reply was cold and practical. Doctor, the Geneva Convention applies to human conflicts. These things aren't human, and they sure as hell aren't showing any mercy to the civilians they're eating. Admiral Zethkari watched in horror as human soldiers cleared building after building using methods that made him sick. They used flamethrowers in enclosed spaces. They threw grenades into rooms without checking for survivors first. They shot wounded Vorthak creatures instead of trying to capture them for study. But the tactics worked. For the first time since the swarm had begun its advance, a Vorthak force wasn't just defeated, it was completely destroyed. Not a single bio-creature escaped. Not one ship managed to flee and warn the rest of the swarm. When the battle was over, Colonel Parker's report was brief and brutal. Hostile forces eliminated, 0 survivors. Civilian casualties, 437, could have been worse. Admiral Zethkari stared at the numbers. In 6 hours, the humans had accomplished what coalition forces hadn't managed in 6 months. They had completely destroyed a Vorthak attack force. but the cost in his own conscience was enormous. Dr. Elena Martinez found him in his private quarters that evening. "Sir, I know what you're thinking. The human methods are harsh. They use weapons and tactics that we would never consider." "They're savages," the Admiral said quietly. "They fight like animals. No, worse than animals. Animals kill for food or territory. These humans kill because they're good at it." Elena sat down across from him. "Sir, with respect, you're wrong. I've been studying their military history. Humans don't fight like savages. They fight like humans. And that's exactly what we need right now." She pulled up a holographic display showing the battle statistics. "Look at these numbers. 0 Vorthak. Survivors. Complete mission success, no human casualties. They didn't fight like savages, Admiral. They fought like professionals who understand that sometimes you have to do terrible things to protect innocent people." Admiral Zethkari looked at the tactical reports from the battle. The humans had saved 12 million coalition civilians, using methods that violated every principle of honorable warfare. They had used banned weapons, forbidden tactics, and shown no mercy to an enemy that offered none. "The question is," Elena continued, "do we want to win this war, or do we want to lose it honorably?" The Admiral closed his 4 eyes and thought about the families on Colony 7, the children who had been consumed by the swarm while coalition forces tried to fight with honor and restraint. Then he thought about the 12 million people who were alive today, because 37 human ships had been willing to fight dirty. He activated his communicator and sent a message to Coalition Command. "Request immediate deployment of additional Terran forces. Human tactics are effective against Vorthak forces. Recommend full integration of human military doctrine into coalition operations." The galaxy was about to learn what 3 centuries of isolation had created. Humanity hadn't become less dangerous during their quarantine. They had become perfectly dangerous, refined by centuries of warfare into the most efficient killers in known space. And now they were fighting for the survival of all life in the galaxy. 6 months after first contact, the war had changed completely. General Susan Hayes stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship watching Altarian officers plan an attack using human tactics. The aliens were discussing poison gas attacks and civilian evacuation procedures in the same calm voices they once used to debate proper shield frequencies. "General Hayes, we need your approval on the Rigel operation," said Commander Veltar, a 4-armed Centaurian who had become one of the best students of human warfare. He displayed a holographic map showing the Rigel system, where 50,000 Vorthak bioships had established a breeding ground. Susan studied the plan with growing amazement. 6 months ago, these coalition officers wouldn't have considered using biological weapons against an ant colony. Now they were planning to poison an entire star system's water supply to stop Vorthak reproduction. "The plan looks solid," she said. "But you're missing something important. The Vorthak will adapt to the poison within 48 hours. You need a backup plan." Commander Veltar nodded and updated the display. "We've prepared secondary attacks using electromagnetic pulse bombs and cyber warfare against their organic computer networks. Captain Murphy helped us design the virus programs." Captain Bill Murphy was leading a training session in the next room, teaching coalition officers about something he called psychological warfare. Susan could hear him explaining how to use fear and confusion as weapons against an enemy that thought as a group mind. "The key is to overload their decision-making process," Murphy was saying to a group of coalition commanders. "Hit them with so many different threats at once that their hive mind can't process it all. Confusion leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to dead enemies." Susan walked into the training room and listened as Murphy continued his lesson. On the screen was a diagram showing how to use false radio signals to make the Vorthak think they were being attacked from multiple directions at once. "But Captain Murphy," asked a young Altarian officer, "isn't this lying to the enemy? Doesn't this violate the rules of honorable combat?" Murphy's laugh was cold. "Lieutenant, the Vorthak ate 6 billion people on Kepler 7 last month. They didn't check the rules of honorable combat before they started digesting children alive. We're not here to fight fair. We're here to win." The room fell silent. Susan had seen this reaction dozens of times over the past months. Coalition officers struggling to understand that sometimes survival required abandoning honor. Some of them adapted quickly. Others never did. Dr. Rachel Green was in the science lab working with coalition researchers on what they called Project Deep Strike. Rachel had discovered something that changed everything they knew about the Vorthak. The aliens' greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. The Vorthak can adapt to any single threat very quickly, Rachel explained to a group of coalition scientists. But if you hit them with multiple different attacks at the same time, their biological systems get confused. They try to adapt to everything at once and end up adapting to nothing properly. She showed them video footage from a recent battle, where human forces had attacked a Vorthak fleet using nuclear weapons, biological agents, cyber attacks, and conventional explosives, all within a 10-minute period. The bioships had tried to adapt to each threat, but failed at all of them. It's like their evolution system crashes when it gets too much input, Rachel continued. They become vulnerable for about 30 minutes while their biology tries to figure out what to prioritize. Dr. Elena Martinez, now serving as the primary liaison between human and coalition forces, was reviewing battle reports in her office when Admiral Zeth Kari came to visit. The admiral looked older than he had 6 months ago. The war was taking its toll on everyone, but coalition officers seemed to age faster as they learned to fight like humans. Dr. Martinez, I need to ask you something, the admiral said, sitting down heavily in a chair. Are we becoming like them? Elena looked up from her reports. Like who, sir? Like the humans, like the people we once called too dangerous for civilized space. The admiral gestured toward the tactical displays showing current operations. Look at what we're doing now. We're poisoning water supplies. We're using biological weapons. We're attacking civilian targets that the Vorthak are using for breeding. Elena studied the admiral's face. She had seen this same look on dozens of coalition officers over the past months. The look of people who had been forced to abandon everything they believed about right and wrong. Sir, may I ask you a question? Do you remember what happened at Colony 7? The admiral's 4 eyes closed. 12 million dead, consumed alive by the swarm. And what happened at Kepler 442 after the humans arrived? 12 million saved. Complete victory against the Vorthak. Elena leaned forward. Admiral, the humans didn't make us more violent. They showed us what violence looks like when it's used to protect innocent people instead of conquer them. There's a difference. That evening, Captain Jake Morrison was leading a briefing for the next major operation. The target was the Vega system, where the Vorthak had established their largest forward base. Over 200 coalition ships would participate in the attack, all of them using tactics that had been developed by human military advisors. The operation begins with Phase 1, Morrison explained to the assembled commanders. We'll use nuclear weapons to create electromagnetic pulses that disrupt their communications. Phase 2 involves biological weapons deployed against their breeding facilities. Phase 3 is direct assault using combined human and coalition forces. A coalition. Commander raised her hand. Captain Morrison, what about civilian casualties? The Vega system still has inhabited planets. Morrison's expression didn't change. All civilian populations will be evacuated before the attack begins. We're not targeting innocents. We're targeting the Vorthak forces that are consuming innocents. After the briefing, Dr. Elena Martinez found Morrison in the hallway. Captain, can I ask you something? How do you sleep at night knowing what your species has taught the rest of the galaxy? Morrison stopped walking and looked at her. Dr. Martinez, I sleep fine because I know that every day we delay, another 1 million civilians die. The coalition spent 3 centuries trying to fight wars without getting their hands dirty. How did that work out when the Vorthak showed up? Elena didn't have an answer for that. In the intelligence center, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Walsh was analyzing intercepted Vorthak communications with coalition cryptographers. The messages they were decoding showed something that should have been impossible. The swarm was afraid. Look at these transmission patterns, Amy said, pointing to the holographic display. The Vorthak are changing their advance routes to avoid systems where human forces are stationed. They're actually running from us. The coalition intelligence officer, a tall Rigelian named Kextar, studied the data with amazement. In 8 months of fighting, we never saw the Vorthak retreat from anything. Now they're avoiding entire star systems because 30 or 40 human ships are stationed there. Amy nodded. It makes sense. The swarm is used to fighting enemies, who follow predictable patterns. They can adapt to anything if they understand it. But human tactics don't follow any pattern. We do whatever works, regardless of whether it's been done before. The intelligence reports were being distributed throughout the Coalition fleet. For the first time since the war began, enemy morale was breaking down. The Vorthak had encountered something they couldn't adapt to, an enemy that changed tactics faster than they could evolve responses. Admiral Zeth Kari read the reports in his private quarters. The swarm that had seemed unstoppable 8 months ago was now retreating from multiple fronts. Human-led coalition forces were winning battles that would have been impossible before first contact, but the cost was visible in the eyes of every coalition officer who had learned to fight like humans. They had traded their innocence for survival, their honor for victory. The question that haunted the admiral was simple. When the war was over, would they be able to find their way back to the civilized people they used to be? Outside his window, Admiral Zeth Kari could see human ships patrolling alongside coalition vessels. The most dangerous species in the galaxy had become their saviors. But as he watched them, he wondered if they had saved civilization or simply taught it how to be as dangerous as they were. The final battle would take place at the heart of the galaxy, where the Vorthak had built their primary hive world. Admiral Patricia Bell stood on the bridge of the human flagship, watching as the largest combined fleet in galactic history prepared for the assault that would end the war. 15,000 ships from 43 different species surrounded the Vorthak home system. Coalition vessels that had once fought with honor and restraint now carried weapons that would have horrified their crews a year ago. Nuclear missiles, biological weapons, cyber warfare viruses, and chemical agents filled their cargo holds. Admiral Bell, this is Admiral Zeth Kari, came the voice over the communication system. Coalition forces are in position and ready for your orders. Patricia looked at the tactical display showing the Vorthak hive world. It was 3 times the size of Earth, covered in biostructures that housed billions of enemy creatures. Intelligence. Reports indicated that this was where the swarm's queen mind lived, the central intelligence that controlled every Vorthak force in the galaxy. All ships, this is Admiral Bell. Today we end this war. Remember, there can be no survivors. The Vorthak have shown that even a single bioship can rebuild their entire swarm given enough time. We fight until every last one of them is dead. The attack began with humanity's signature tactic. Overwhelming force applied from multiple directions simultaneously. Nuclear weapons detonated in the planet's atmosphere, creating electromagnetic pulses that shut down the Vorthak's communication networks. Biological weapons were deployed against their food production facilities. Cyber viruses attacked their organic computer systems. But this battle was different from all the others. The Vorthak had been learning too. As the human-led fleet approached the hive world, massive bioships emerged from hidden positions throughout the system. The swarm had been preparing for this final confrontation. Colonel Mike Jordan led the ground assault with 50,000 human Marines and 200,000 coalition troops. Their mission was to penetrate the deepest levels of the hive world and destroy the queen mind directly. It was the most dangerous operation of the war. Colonel Jordan, we're detecting massive biostructures beneath the planet's surface, reported his communications officer. The hive network extends down over 1,000 kilometers. Mike studied the scanner readings as his transport ships entered the planet's atmosphere. The Vorthak had turned their entire world into a single massive organism. Every building, every tunnel, every structure was alive and hostile. All units, prepare for immediate deployment. Rules of engagement are simple. If it moves and it's not one of us, kill it. If it doesn't move but looks like it might be Vorthak, kill it anyway. The landing was a nightmare. Vorthak bio-creatures attacked from every direction as human and coalition forces established beachheads on the planet's surface. The aliens fought with desperate fury, knowing that this was their last chance for survival. Dr. Elena Martinez was with the assault forces, wearing combat armor and carrying weapons she never thought she would use. Her job was to guide the attack teams toward the Queen Mind's location using her knowledge of Vorthak biology. The Queen Mind will be in the deepest part of the hive, she explained to Colonel Jordan as they advanced through a tunnel filled with hostile biomatter. It's probably connected to every living thing on this planet. Killing it should shut down the entire swarm. The tunnel walls around them pulsed with alien life. Vorthak creatures emerged from hidden chambers, only to be cut down by human weapons that had been designed for exactly this kind of close-quarters combat. Flamethrowers burned through biobarriers. Chemical weapons cleared passages filled with toxic gases. Explosives opened new routes when the existing tunnels became too dangerous. Above ground, Admiral Bell coordinated the orbital bombardment that was slowly destroying the planet's surface defenses. Coalition ships that had once refused to fire, uninhabited worlds now bombarded cities filled with Vorthak breeding chambers without hesitation. "Admiral, we're detecting massive biosignatures moving toward the surface," reported her tactical officer. "It looks like the Vorthak are sending everything they have against our ground forces." Patricia watched the sensor displays as millions of enemy creatures swarmed toward the human and coalition landing sites. "All ships, concentrate fire on those bioswarms. Don't let them reach our people on the ground." The space battle raged for hours as Vorthak bioships tried to break through the orbital bombardment to help their ground forces. Human tactics had spread throughout the coalition fleet, and the alien crews fought with a ruthlessness that would have been impossible a year ago. Deep underground, Colonel Jordan's forces were fighting through the final levels of the hive complex. The biostructures here were different from anything they had encountered before. The walls themselves seemed to be thinking, reacting to the human presence with intelligence and malice. "Colonel, we're getting close to the Queen Mind's chamber," Elena reported, checking her scanner readings. "But the biomass is getting thicker. It's like the entire planet is trying to stop us." Mike looked ahead at the tunnel that seemed to be closing itself as they approached. "Set charges on the walls. If we can't go through, we'll make our own path." The explosions echoed through the underground complex as human combat engineers blasted new passages through living rock. Coalition soldiers followed behind them, using chemical weapons to prevent the tunnels from healing themselves. Finally, after 8 hours of fighting through the planet's depths, they reached the Queen Mind's chamber. It was a vast cavern filled with a single enormous biostructure that pulsed with alien intelligence. Thousands of organic cables connected it to every part of the hive world. "That's it," Elena whispered. "The central intelligence that controls every Vorthak in the galaxy." The Queen Mind seemed to sense their presence. Bio-creatures poured into the chamber from hidden passages, attacking with desperate fury to protect their central intelligence. But human weapons had been designed for exactly this moment. Colonel Jordan ordered the final assault. Chemical weapons poisoned the air around the Queen Mind. Biological agents attacked its organic structure. Explosives severed the cables that connected it to the rest of the hive. Flamethrowers burned through its defensive barriers. The Queen Mind's death scream echoed across the galaxy. On every world where Vorthak forces were fighting, the bio-creatures suddenly stopped moving. Ships drifted helplessly in space. Ground forces collapsed where they stood. The swarm was dead. Admiral Bell watched from orbit as the last Vorthak biostructures on the planet's surface went dark. After 18 months of war, it was finally over. The galaxy was safe. But the victory came with a price that would haunt the survivors forever. President Lisa Carter received the final casualty reports in her office on Earth. 2 billion coalition civilians had died during the war. 50 million human and coalition military personnel had been killed in action. Entire star systems had been rendered uninhabitable by the weapons used to stop the swarm. Dr. Elena Martinez, now serving as the first human ambassador to the coalition, addressed the Galactic Council 3 months after the war's end. Representatives from every surviving species listened as she spoke about humanity's place in the new galactic order. "You called us the most dangerous species in the galaxy," she said, looking out at the assembled aliens. "You were right. We are dangerous. We're willing to do things that civilized people won't do. We'll use any weapon, any tactic, any method necessary to protect innocent life." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But that's exactly why you needed us. The Vorthak were stopped not because we were more advanced or more numerous, but because we were willing to fight them on their own terms. Sometimes when you're facing pure evil, you need someone who's willing to become temporarily evil to stop it. The council chamber was silent as Elena continued. The quarantine is officially ended. Humanity is part of galactic civilization now. But remember this, we didn't change during our isolation. We didn't become less dangerous. If anything, we became more dangerous. The question now is, what kind of galaxy do we build together? Admiral Zethkari, now serving as the Coalition's military commander, had the answer. The galaxy would be different now. Species that had fought with honor for millennia had learned to fight with ruthless efficiency. The innocence of the old galactic order was gone forever, but the stars still shone, children still played on 1,000 worlds, and civilization continued, because sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the only choice that leads to survival.